The small village of Makuto was peaceful and quiet. The villagers lived simple lives, tending their farms and caring for their families. But there was one place in Makuto that no one ever wanted to go to at night: the old schoolhouse. People said it was haunted by a ghost, and everyone was too scared to find out if it was true. One sunny morning, the children of Makuto gathered outside the school. The old building stood tall, with vines creeping up its walls and broken windows that seemed to whisper secrets. The children whispered to each other, their eyes wide with fear and curiosity. "We have to go inside," said Kiki, the bravest boy in the village. He was 10 years old, with bright eyes and a mischievous smile. "We need to find out if the ghost is real." His friends, Sofi and Toti, looked at each other nervously. Sofi, a girl with long braids and a kind heart, shivered at the thought. Toti, who loved to tell stories, tried to look brave but couldn't hide his trembling hands. "Are you sure, Kiki?" Sofi asked, her voice shaking. "Yes, Sofi. We need to be brave," Kiki replied, trying to sound confident. "Let's go." The three friends held hands and walked toward the old schoolhouse. As they got closer, the air seemed to grow colder, and a strange wind whispered through the trees. They pushed open the creaky door and stepped inside. The schoolhouse was dark and dusty. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and the wooden floor creaked under their feet. The desks were covered in dust, and an old chalkboard stood at the front of the room. It felt like the building was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Suddenly, a cold gust of wind blew through the room, making the children shiver. They huddled together, their hearts pounding in their chests. Then they heard it, a faint, ghostly whisper. "Who's there?" Kiki called out, his voice trembling. There was no answer, only the eerie sound of the wind. Sofi clutched Kiki's hand tighter, and Toti's eyes darted around the room, looking for any sign of movement. "We need to find the ghost," Kiki said, trying to sound brave. "Maybe it's trying to tell us something." They searched the schoolhouse, opening old cupboards and peeking behind broken desks. As they explored, they found an old, tattered book lying on the teacher's desk. The cover was dusty, and the pages were yellowed with age. Kiki picked it up and opened it. "It's a diary," he said, showing the others. "It belongs to someone named Abena." Sofi and Toti leaned in to read over his shoulder. The diary was filled with neat, careful handwriting. The first entry was dated many years ago, and it told the story of a young girl named Abena who had once been a student at the school. As they read, they learned that Abena had loved the school and her friends. But one day, something terrible had happened. Abena had disappeared, and no one had ever seen her again. The villagers believed she had been taken by a ghost. Kiki, Sofi, and Toti felt a chill run down their spines. Could the ghost of Abena still be haunting the school? "We have to help her," Sofi said, her voice determined. "We need to find out what happened to Abena." The friends continued to search the schoolhouse, hoping to find more clues. As they explored, they felt the presence of the ghost growing stronger. The air grew colder, and strange sounds echoed through the halls. In one of the classrooms, they found an old, faded photograph of Abena. She was smiling, her eyes full of life and happiness. Seeing her face made the children even more determined to uncover the truth. "We won't give up Abena," Kiki whispered, holding the photograph tightly. "We will find out what happened to you." As the sun began to set, the friends knew they had to leave the schoolhouse and return to the village. But they promised each other that they would come back the next day and continue their search. That night, as they lay in their beds, they couldn't stop thinking about Abena and the ghost that haunted the school. They knew that their journey had just begun, and that many more mysteries awaited them in the old schoolhouse. The next morning, Kiki, Sofi, and Toti met at the edge of the village. They were determined to find out the truth, no matter how scary it might be. They knew they had to be brave, not just for themselves, but for Abena too. They walked together to the schoolhouse, their hearts filled with both fear and hope. As they stepped inside, they felt the cold wind once again, and they knew that the ghost was waiting for them. "We're here to help you, Abena," Kiki said aloud, hoping that the ghost could hear him. "We will find out what happened to you." The friends began their search anew, looking for any clue that might lead them to the truth. They checked every corner, every hidden nook, in every dusty cupboard. And then, in the old attic, they found something that made their hearts race. It was a small, locked box. The lock was rusty, and the box was covered in dust. Kiki carefully picked it up, and they all gathered around. "What's inside?" Sofi asked, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. "I don't know," Kiki replied, "but we need to open it." Toti found an old hairpin on the floor and handed it to Kiki. With shaking hands, Kiki managed to pick the lock. The box creaked open, revealing a bundle of letters and a small, silver locket. The letters were addressed to Abena, and they were from her family. As they read the letters, they learned that Abena's family had loved her very much and that they had been searching for her ever since she disappeared. The locket contained a small picture of Abena and her family. It was a precious keepsake, and holding it made the children feel closer to Abena. "We need to take these letters and the locket to Abena's family," Sofi said, her eyes shining with determination. "Maybe they can help us understand what happened to her." The friends carefully gathered the letters and the locket, and they made their way back to the village. They knew that finding Abena's family would be the next step in their journey to uncover the truth and help the ghost find peace. As they walked through the village, they felt a sense of purpose and bravery. They were no longer just children. They were heroes on a mission to help a lost soul find her way home. When they reached the village square, they asked the elders if anyone knew Abena's family. The elders were surprised to hear the children's story, but they listened carefully and soon directed them to an old house on the edge of the village. The house was small and humble, with a garden full of colorful flowers. The children knocked on the door, and an elderly woman answered. She had kind eyes and a gentle smile. "How can I help you?" she asked, her voice warm and welcoming. "We found these in the old schoolhouse," Kiki said, holding out the letters and the locket. "They belong to Abena. Do you know her?" The woman's eyes filled with tears as she took the letters and the locket. "Abena is my granddaughter," she said softly. "She disappeared many years ago, and we never knew what happened to her." The friends felt a wave of sadness wash over them. They had hoped that Abena's family would know more about what had happened to her. But now, they realized that they still had much to discover. "We're trying to find out what happened to Abena," Sofi said gently. "We think her ghost is haunting the schoolhouse. Can you help us?" The elderly woman nodded, wiping away her tears. "I will tell you everything I know," she said. "But first, let's sit down and talk." They sat together in the woman's cozy living room, and she began to tell them the story of Abena. She spoke of a bright, happy girl who loved to learn and play with her friends. But then, one fateful day, Abena had disappeared without a trace. The villagers had searched everywhere, but they had never found any sign of her. Over time, people began to believe that she had been taken by a ghost. But her family had never given up hope. The friends listened intently, their hearts heavy with the weight of the story. They knew that they had to find out the truth, not just for Abena, but for her family as well. "We will find out what happened to Abena," Kiki promised. "We won't give up." The elderly woman smiled through her tears. "Thank you, children," she said. "Abena's spirit will rest easier knowing that you are trying to help her." With renewed determination, the friends left the house and made their way back to the schoolhouse. They knew that their journey was far from over, but they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As they stepped inside, they knew they had to find the truth about Abena's disappearance and bring peace to her restless spirit. "We need to look for more clues," Kiki said, his voice steady. "There has to be something we missed." Sofi and Toti nodded in agreement. They stepped inside the schoolhouse, the air feeling colder than ever. The ghostly presence seemed to grow stronger with each step they took. As they made their way through the dark, dusty halls, they heard faint whispers. The sound sent shivers down their spines, but they pressed on, their bravery fueled by their mission. In one of the classrooms, they found a hidden trapdoor under an old, broken desk. It was covered in dust and cobwebs, and it looked like it hadn't been opened in years. Kiki carefully lifted the trapdoor, revealing a dark, narrow staircase leading down into the basement. "Should we go down there?" Toti asked, his voice trembling. "We have to," Sofi replied, her eyes filled with determination. "This might lead us to the truth." The friends descended the stairs, the air growing colder and the whispers growing louder with each step. The basement was dark and damp, with only a few beams of light shining through cracks in the ceiling. As they explored the basement, they found an old, locked door. The door was covered in strange symbols, and it seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. "We need to open it," Kiki said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. Toti found a rusty key on a nearby shelf, and with trembling hands, Kiki inserted it into the lock. The door creaked open, revealing a small, hidden room. Inside the room, they found a large, ornate mirror. The mirror was cracked and covered in dust, but as they approached it, they saw a faint, ghostly figure reflected in the glass. It was Abena. "Abena?" Sofi called out, her voice gentle. "Can you hear us?" The ghostly figure nodded slowly. Tears welled up in the children's eyes as they realized that they had finally found Abena. "We're here to help you," Kiki said softly. "We found your letters and locket. We want to help you find peace." The ghost of Abena reached out towards the locket in Kiki's hand. As he placed it in the ghost's hand, the room was filled with a bright, warm light. The cold air vanished, and the whispers stopped. "Thank you," Abena's voice echoed softly. "I can finally rest now." The ghostly figure faded away, and the children felt a sense of peace wash over them. They knew that Abena's spirit was finally at rest. The friends left the basement, feeling lighter and braver than ever before. They had faced their fears and helped a lost soul find peace. Back in the village, they shared their story with the elders and Abena's family. The villagers were amazed and grateful for the children's bravery. The old schoolhouse was no longer a place of fear. It had become a symbol of courage and friendship. From that day on, Kiki, Sofi, and Toti were known as the heroes of Makuto. They had uncovered the truth, faced their fears, and brought peace to a restless spirit. And although their adventure was over, they knew that they would always be ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together.